What's up, tribe? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is going to be your review for Queen Sugar Season 5, Episode 6. I'm going to try to get through this episode without totally losing it, okay? I thought about not doing a review for this episode, but then I said, you know what? I can't do that. I thought about waiting until tomorrow, and I was like, it ain't going to get no easier. Let me say this before I get into the episode. Kudos to the writers and anybody that had anything to do with this episode. In my opinion, this is the best handling of the George Floyd murder that I have seen on any TV show that I watch. Let me just review the show, okay? So Ralph Angel and Darla are leaving for their honeymoon. Blue is with Aunt Vi, and everyone is happy. We left off on a high note last week, and we knew from the previews where we were going this week. And then the ground opens up and swallows us whole. The George Floyd murder takes place. We see all of the characters' reaction to it. We see Charlie. Micah immediately flashes back to when he was arrested and his experience with dealing with the police. Nova, we have this powerful moment when Nova sets her timer to 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and she reads the names, and it's just a moment. It's just a moment. We see Prosper and Aunt Vi, of course, talking about racism. And Prosper was like, listen, racism ain't never been pretty. It ain't never been easy. And it's always been ugly. We see Hollywood watching it. And Aunt Vi walks in on just that moment where the reporter is saying he was calling out for his mother. And of course, we know that is still very raw, with Hollywood just losing his mom. And then we have a couple of really, really hard conversations in this episode. It was an excellent conversation we see Nova and her boyfriend. He brings her some coffee, asks her how she's doing. Of course, she's like, hey, I've been better. I have been better. And they get to talking about what happened. And she has a book. They said the name of the book, and I didn't write it down. But it's a book of lynchings. And it shows people who watched. And she said, for me, the worst part isn't the cop that killed him, but the fact that 3 cops stood by and watched it happen, and none of them stopped him and said that's enough, while he is screaming for his life and the onlookers are saying stop, 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 stop. And if you know anything about lynchings, which I'm sure you all do, you know that lynchings became a Sunday afternoon entertainment. People dressed up, they had postcards made. It was a thing that people were proud of. And I'm sure if anybody is willing to admit it, there are people who are walking around right now. I'm sure they were probably older. They're probably in their 70s and 80s who remember growing up and their parents took them to a lynching. There's this moment where Micah and Charlie come out. Both of them come out in the hallway because they're in their own rooms watching this. And they come out in the hallway and all she can do is hug her son. I mean, all she can do is hug her son, And of course, like I said, Micah is reliving his experience. And, he said, listen, the bad part about this was it wasn't in some dark alley. It wasn't on some dirt road. It wasn't the 1960s. This was in broad daylight. in broad daylight, and she's all she could do is hug him while he's crying, while he's breaking down. And so Nova's gonna write a story for her website, but the story is gonna focus on the people who watch, the people who watch. Now, while all of this is going on, Ralph Angel and Darla, they have a hotel, look like they have a nice ocean view, and they are in their own little world. They're oblivious to it because they're on their honeymoon. Ain't nobody watching TV. Ain't nobody watching the news. I guess they got their phones cut off. You know what I mean? Which they should be doing. They're on their honeymoon. They shouldn't have to worry about what's going on. And then Nova has this really, really hard conversation. She comes out of her room. The boyfriend is there. His daughter is there. And the boyfriend, she says to him, "Do you feel guilty?" He said, what do you mean, do I feel guilty? She said, "Do you feel guilty?" No, shamed. Not guilty, shamed. Do you feel ashamed? And he said, do I feel ashamed? He said, "I'm angry, but I didn't do it. Why do I feel ashamed?" And his daughter is there, and his daughter is like, "Yeah, why? He didn't have nothing to do with it." She said, "Yeah, but when black people do stuff, it's always a collective moment. One black person steals, we all must be criminals. One black person acts up on a job, none of us have any discipline. You've had this fool in the White House for the last 4 years, and white people are like, oh, well, he's just an idiot. Let that have been Obama. Every black person would be walking around hanging our heads in shame." And just like that, his daughter is like, "Oh, I get it. Yeah, like black people are a collective, right? Oh yeah, that is so terrible." She irritates me because I still don't trust her, and I just feel like she a get along type person, a hop on pop type person, and I don't like it. Especially in this episode, and especially in that moment. The one thing I will respect about Nova's boyfriend in that moment was he knew to shut the fuck up and just let her listen and let her talk and let her vent. He knew to just shut up. But and Nova said, "Listen, at the end of the day, the cops that stood by and let it happen are just as guilty, if not more so, than the cop who did it. And the fact that you are sitting here telling me that you feel no shame, that you are unbothered, that it does not affect you just because you didn't do it, just because you weren't there to stop it, I don't know what to do with that. Because I know that if that were a black cop, I would have a level of shame that I don't even know I'd be able to articulate." And I'm like, and see, these are the moments where being in an interracial relationship is very challenging. Because what I can respect from Nova is that she didn't bite her tongue. She didn't tiptoe around it. She faced it head on. She came at him head on, and she needed those answers. But the flip side is everybody doesn't have those honest conversations. And then as a relationship, then you push those things aside and push them to the back, and it creates more of a problem. Now, over to Charlie's house, we have Micah. He's on the phone with his friend talking about, "So man, you need to get there. Are you coming? It's gonna be everything. You need to make sure you're there." And of course, I think it's supposed to give us the implication that he's planning a party or something. But we know Micah well enough by now to know that Micah ain't planning no damn party. Micah's planning a protest, okay? Now, his friend says, "Listen, are you watching the news?" And he wasn't at the time. He was working out. He was like, "Yeah, hold on. I just got the volume down. Let me see what's going on." And that's when we start seeing the riots had started happening where they set the police station on fire. And Micah's looking at the TV and he like, "Hell yeah, burn that shit down." And so, of course, Charlie comes in and Charlie's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Micah. Oh, hold up. What are you talking about? And they end up having a really good conversation, which I feel like every older generation has had with the younger generation about the best way to fix it, the best way to approach it. Micah's thing is, listen, at this time, burn that shit down. And Charlie was like, but what if somebody's in there? Somebody could get hurt. Like, this is not the time for us to lose it. And Micah was like, why not? She said, well, we need to peacefully protest. He said, see, that's an oxymoron. We don't need to be peacefully doing nothing right now. We need to burn it to the ground. We need to show them that we serious and that we mean it, because I'm tired of it. How much longer are we going to have to do this and turn the other cheek? And so then they start throwing quotes at each other, right? Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, and she says, well, listen, there's a protest happening. There's going to be a large police presence. Are you planning on going to that protest? He was like, oh, I helped plan it. And you see them have that generational moment, and again, I 100% understand where Micah's coming from, especially in that moment, and I always think about the 1960s and that shift from the Martin Luther King to the SNCC to the Black Panthers, right? It's that progression that we saw. And it's sort of that same mindset. And we all lived through this summer. We saw the riots, because Michael back at her, Martin Luther King, because the Martin Luther King quote was about there cannot be darkness without light. And I'm paraphrasing because I know that's not the exact quote. And then he threw back at her. King also said riots are the language of the unheard, and so it was a powerful moment, and it was a great conversation. Again, so many good conversations in this episode, so many powerful moments in this episode. And later on in the episode, Micah's on his way to the protest, and Charlie says, Micah, and he said, Mom, please don't try to talk me out of going. She said, I ain't trying to talk you out of going. I'm asking, do you have another shirt? Because he's got a shirt on that's like, it didn't say no justice, no peace, but it was something along those lines. And he was like, I do. You going? And so you see in that moment that she understands that this is where I need to be, and I need to be with him. Right? Even though she may not necessarily agree with everything he's saying, he knows. Now, in this moment, Hollywood called Ralph Angel, and I understood why Hollywood did it. He was dealing with emotions. He didn't know what to do. He was reaching out to his friend. But I also felt like Ralph Angel's on his honeymoon. Leave him alone. Like, let him be in his honeymoon bubble right now. And of course, Ralph Angel just he turned on the news and he just sat on the couch and he cried. He just cried like a baby. Next thing you know, we see Ava down at the diner, and they're boarding the diner up because, of course, they're worried about a riot. They're worried about vandalism. And so they're putting plywood up and all these different things. And then Vi was like, listen, Hollywood, ain't nobody gonna mess with the diner. Like, like I know, everybody know who the diner belongs to. Everybody knows me and loves me. I don't know why we doing all this. We really need to go board up your spot, because your spot ain't even open yet, and a lot of people may not associate it with you. And he was like, I don't care about that. He was like, I don't care about that no more. And she was like, what you mean you don't care about that no more? And he said, let it go, Vi. Like, I ain't ready to talk about that. Let it go. And so she just sort of looks over at Mr. Prosper, and Prosper just sitting there looking at her like, he's giving her that silent, let it go. Like, let it go. He said, can you just hand me some hammer and nails out my toolbox? And so she was like, fine, but I don't know which nails to hand you. And she said, well, is it here underneath this? And of course, she looks in and there's a gun there. And what we find out is that they had agreed that there would be no guns in the house. And she was like, where did this come from and how long have you had it? And so Mr. Prosper quietly tips out of the conversation so that they can have a conversation about it. And he told her, he said, listen, I know how you felt about guns, and so, with everything going on with George Floyd, she said, hold up, Hollywood, don't do that. You done had this gun longer than that, and we agreed that there would be no guns in the house. So for every day that you had this gun in our home, you were lying to me. And he was telling her, but he told her, he said, listen, I, as a black man, need to feel like I can protect my family. I don't, I get it. I understand how you felt about it, but I had to feel like I could protect us at our home. And I had to keep my dignity however I feel like I need to keep my dignity, right? Now, while this is going on, we got Nova having dinner with the family. You know, they getting ready for the protest. They watching the riots on the news. And he's trying to get her to not watch the news. And he's trying to get her to, like, take her mind off of it for a minute. And in one moment, I understand where he's coming from, because it's like, you've been, like, it's that all day loop. You know, it's that constant loop. But the flip side is, we couldn't tear ourselves away from it. Right? So, his daughter, they started having, her and the daughter started having a conversation again. And she ends up quoting James Baldwin. She talking about Jimmy B said that. Jimmy B? And so, of course, the boyfriend was like, well, who is Jimmy B? Nova says, James Baldwin said that in The Fire Next Time, and that's how you really should address him. And I remember, you know, it's like, put some respect on that man's name. He ain't tell you to call him Jimmy B. His name is James Baldwin. And I remember it being ninth grade high school. I remember my ninth grade teacher, we were reading Romeo and Juliet, child. And I remember we had to do an essay on Romeo and Juliet. And I remember her telling us that we are not to abbreviate William Shakespeare's name in any way, shape, or form. He ain't Bill. He ain't Billy. He ain't William S. He is William Shakespeare. And for as many times as you want to say William Shakespeare in your essay, you will write out William Shakespeare. And it took me back to that moment, because it was like, listen, you're going to put some respect on this man's name. And I felt the same way, like, who the fuck are you to decide he Jimmy B? The fuck? Like that, like, that's like the Jimmy B. Are you crazy right now? Jimmy B. Anyway, but that's kind of what Nova, that's the look that Nova, that's the look that Nova gave her, like, Jimmy B. Y'all, she was getting on my nerves this whole episode. I just want you to know. So then Nova looks over at the boyfriend, and she asks the boyfriend about the time that he stood by and watched as a black boy was beat up. Now, remember, we had this conversation a couple of seasons ago, so we know that this happened, but of course his daughter didn't know. She was like, Dad, you did what? And so he told the story about how he was a rookie cop, and the boy stole a candy bar out the store, but the owner of the store knew his partner and called his partner to come down, and he called some friends, and they beat the boy up, and they called it a down payment. And his daughter was like, what you mean a down payment? A down payment meaning teach them young so that they understand. Right? And, you know, he said something along the lines of, you know, well, it wasn't my best day. Nova told my son, well, I'm sure it wasn't his either. And I definitely see that this is going to continue to be some problems moving forward. I don't know if they're going to survive it or not, but it's not going to go away. One, it ain't going away because Nova can't let nothing go away. Two, it's too serious for it to go away, you know. So, once Darla found out about it, Darla wants to go home. She wants to end the honeymoon early and go home. And Ralph Angel, of course, being respectful of her wishes and understanding her wanting to go home. But he was like, listen, this ain't going nowhere. We only have 2 more days of our honeymoon. Why don't we stay here instead of leaving early? Why don't we stay? That ugliness is waiting for us when we get there. It ain't going nowhere. But why can't we just have a couple of days of continuing to live in our bubble? And that's why part of me was mad that Hollywood called him. But I understood why Hollywood did it. But I just felt like, did you really need to call him on his honeymoon, though? Like, did you really, though, Hollywood? Did you really? And Darla was like, I understand what you're saying, and you're right. She said, but I just need to hold my baby. I just need to hold my baby. And again, I get it. And she has this t-shirt on that says Black Moms Matter, right? So they're at the gas station and they're pumping gas, you know, and there's a white guy there talking about some Black Moms Matter. Well, what about my mom? And she was like, you know, and of course, they looking at him. He's like, well, what if I wore a shirt that said, he was like, what about all lives matter? What if I wore a shirt that said, white lives matter? And Darla looked at him and was like, that'd be redundant. And so, of course, he started getting, he started saying a little slick shit to Ralph Angel. And he told us, oh, you got you a mouthy one there. Ralph Angel was like, all right, now, you don't want this smoke. Player, you don't want it. I'm just going to finish pumping your gas, get in your car and pull off, because this ain't what you want. And he was like, y'all just, so y'all burning down the cities. What's that mean for a guy who had it coming? I mean, the police were called on him for a reason. Ralph Angel was like, not a good one. And Ralph Angel was like, listen, y'all's days are numbered, okay? So just go and get in your car and roll out before you get this whooping you don't want. And of course, Darla was like, Ralph Angel. He was like, nah, I'm good. He just need to get in his car. He need to roll out. So to Ralph Angel's credit, it didn't turn into no whole fight, no fisticuffs or nothing like that. They end up coming home. And then we have the conversation that every black parent hates to have with their black son, but has to. And so they thought that Blue didn't know what was going on. But of course, Blue is way too smart, and technology is what it is, that I'm sure he saw something. He heard something, right? So, everybody's down at the protest, child. Everybody at the protest. Okay. So, Blue asked, why did they kill him or something to that effect. And you saw Darla look at Ralph Angel. And Ralph Angel said, no reason. And Darla was like, Ralph Angel. And he said, He said, it's time. And it was almost like, I was sitting there like, it's almost like when you tell your kid that Santa Claus don't exist. It's like you're shattering their childhood. But in that moment, Blue needed to hear the conversation. And it was so heartbreaking and Ralph Angel was like, listen, Blue, I need to tell you what to do when you get pulled over by the police. And Blue said, but I'm not going to do anything wrong. I'm not going to be a criminal. And Ralph Angel said, and this is the part that broke my heart. Ralph Angel said, it doesn't matter. You will get pulled over by the police. And I need to teach you how to stay alive. Y'all, that thing broke my heart. It broke my heart for so many reasons. It broke my heart because it's true. It's true. Blue needed to know. Blue needed to hear the conversation. It broke my heart. And so Ralph Angel went on to tell him about, you get pulled over by the police, don't run. That's how they shoot you in the back. And you call us immediately. And Blue is crying, and Ralph Angel is crying, and Darla is crying, and Blue is like, but I don't understand. I don't understand, and it's just, it is the most heartbreaking conversation. Oh my God. But it was so well done. It was so well acted. It was just, everything was good and bad all at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And then we have Aunt Vi and Hollywood. And Hollywood is talking to Aunt Vi. Hollywood, he's laying in her lap and he's just telling her how helpless as a black man he feels. He said, you looking at that man laying on that concrete dying. And the last thing he called for was his mother. And he said, can you imagine as a black man to feel like the only thing that can protect us is our mother? He said, and in George Floyd's case, his mama wasn't even here anymore. And again, we know the connection because, of course, Hollywood losing his mom so recently. And Aunt Vi understood, and, she just held him. She just held him because, again, I don't think we as black women really truly understand how helpless black men feel. We can't. We just can't. Yeah, it was such a good episode. I can't. There's no review that can do this episode justice. It was such a good episode. Please, for your consideration, the Emmys, the Academy, the NAACP Awards, whoever, please, this episode deserves all of the awards. All of them. Anyway, y'all let me know what y'all think. Drop it in those comments. Peace.